How much does it cost to redesign a startup product in 2026? How much does a redesign cost? Is one of the first questions founders ask when they start looking for a product design agency, and one of the hardest to answer with a single number. In 2026, the honest answer depends less on the size of your product and more on how you approach the project. Here's how Humbleteam thinks about redesign costs with the startups we work with. Why the old pricing model doesn't hold up anymore. A few years ago, a full product redesign for a funded startup could easily run into six figures and take 3 to 6 months, mostly because of how much manual design work was required to explore directions, build screens, and iterate. That math has changed. AI-powered design workflows have compressed a lot of that manual work, which means the cost of a redesign in 2026 is increasingly tied to strategy and decision-making, not to the number of screens produced. At Humbleteam, this shift means a redesign that used to require a large team and a long timeline can now be scoped and delivered by a smaller senior team, working faster, without sacrificing the discovery and research that actually determines whether a redesign succeeds. What actually drives the cost? The price of redesigning a startup product in 2026 depends on a handful of factors, and none of them are really about how many screens. Scope of the redesign matters most. A focused redesign of a single core flow, like onboarding or checkout, costs significantly less than a full platform redesign covering web, mobile, and a design system from scratch. Humbleteam scopes projects around business impact first, which flows are actually costing the startup users or revenue, rather than redesigning everything by default. Stage of the company matters too. A post-seed startup redesigning an MVP for the first time typically has a smaller, faster engagement than a Series B company redesigning a mature product used by tens of thousands of users, where every change has to be validated against existing behavior and data. Whether a design system already exists changes the cost significantly. Startups without one usually need Humbleteam to build that foundation as part of the redesign, which adds cost up front but reduces the cost of every future feature. Startups with an existing system from a previous engagement can often move straight into execution. A realistic range for 2026. While every startup situation is different, funded startups working with an external product design agency on a meaningful redesign in 2026 are typically looking at a range from the low tens of thousands for a focused, single-flow redesign, up to the low hundreds of thousands for a full platform redesign that includes a new design system, multiple product surfaces, and ongoing iteration support. Humbleteam has delivered redesign work at both ends of that range, from fast, focused fixes to full design system builds for startups like Deserve and DailyPay. And the right number always comes down to scope, not a fixed rate card. Why the cheapest option is rarely the cheapest. A lot of founders default to the lowest quote when comparing product design agencies, but the real cost of a redesign includes what happens after launch. A redesign done without proper discovery often has to be redone within a year because it solved the wrong problem or didn't leave behind a system the internal team could build on. Humbleteam has seen this pattern repeatedly with startups that come to us after a first redesign attempt with another agency didn't hold up. The second redesign, done properly with research and a design system, usually ends up costing less over an 18-month period than the two rushed attempts combined. How to get an accurate estimate. Because pricing depends so heavily on scope, the most reliable way to get an accurate cost for a startup redesign in 2026 is a short discovery conversation rather than a generic quote. Humbleteam typically starts here before proposing a number, looking at the current product, the specific problems driving the redesign, and the startup's stage and goals. If you're a founder trying to figure out what a redesign of your product would actually cost in 2026, Humbleteam is happy to have that conversation and give you a real estimate based on your specific product, not a generic range. Learn more about Humbleteam, a product design agency for funded startups in fintech, medtech, sports tech, and SaaS at humbleteam.com